Perhaps you have experienced this before. A day when your heart felt heavier than usual, when a conversation left you feeling sad, when a quiet loss passed through your life, when loneliness appeared even though many people were still around you, or simply those days when you could not quite name what you were feeling. And then evening arrived, and you felt more exhausted. You wanted to sleep longer, to lie quietly beneath a warm blanket for a little while longer, to step away from the world for a few brief hours. Many people believe this is a sign of weakness. Some think they are becoming lazy. But what if the truth is exactly the opposite? What if the desire to sleep more when you are sad is not a flaw in the body, but one of the most intelligent healing mechanisms nature has ever created? Tonight, we will explore a fascinating question together. Why do human beings need more deep sleep when they are sad? What is happening inside the brain when the heart is hurting? Why does deep sleep possess the remarkable ability to help us recover emotionally? And could it be that in the quiet darkness of the night, while we are asleep, the mind is still silently carrying out healing work that consciousness cannot see? Through the lens of modern science, we will enter the extraordinary world of the brain, emotions, and sleep. But at the same time, we will also journey deeper into the unconscious realms that Carl Gustav Jung devoted his life to exploring. Jung believed that what takes place beneath the surface of consciousness is often more important than what we can see, and perhaps sleep is one of the most mysterious doorways into that hidden world. On tonight's journey, you will discover why sadness is not always an enemy, why the body sometimes needs more rest to move through invisible wounds, and why deep sleep may be the quietest healer we have ever known. If this is your first time visiting Stories for Sleep, welcome to a place where we explore the deepest mysteries of the human mind, science, philosophy, and psychology through gentle stories designed to help you relax before sleep. If you enjoy slow and thoughtful journeys like this one, take a moment to subscribe and join us for the nights ahead. And now, take a slow breath in. Exhale gently. Relax your shoulders. Allow the sounds of the world to drift farther away, and let us begin exploring a remarkable truth. Why sometimes the very best thing you can do for a sorrowful heart is simply to sleep a little deeper. Part 1. Sadness is not a weakness, but a signal of healing. There is something very strange about being human. When the body is injured, we usually know what to do. If we cut our hand, we bandage the wound. If we have a fever, we rest. If we break a bone, we accept that the body needs time to recover. But when the soul is wounded, everything suddenly becomes far more complicated. When sadness appears, when the heart feels heavy, when a quiet loss enters our lives, when a relationship ends, when a dream falls apart, when a loved one moves away, when loneliness slips into the silent hours of the night, many of us respond in the same way. We try to be strong. We try to get back up. We try to keep going. We try to work harder, stay busier, distract ourselves more, as though sadness is something that must be defeated, an enemy that must be eliminated, a weakness that must be hidden. But what if that perspective is not entirely true? What if sadness is not a sign that something is wrong with you? What if sadness is actually a natural part of the healing process, a biological signal, a message from deep within the mind, a quiet note the body is trying to send to consciousness? Throughout human history, sadness has often been misunderstood. We celebrate strength, admired optimism, honor productivity, but we are rarely taught how to meet painful emotions with gentleness. And yet, if we observe nature, we begin to notice a fascinating pattern. There is no spring without winter. There is no growth without periods of rest. There is no new day without the night. Nature does not fight its cycles. It lives with them. And so do we. Sadness may be part of the mind's natural cycle of recovery. Carl Gustav Jung spent his life exploring the deepest regions of the human soul. He discovered that many things we call problems are actually transformations, periods during which the psyche is attempting to reorganize itself. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This is not a pessimistic statement, quite the opposite. It is a profoundly hopeful reminder that painful emotions are not always signs of collapse. They may be signs that something is being reborn within us. When people are sad, many notice that they feel more tired than usual. They sleep more. They struggle to concentrate. They have less energy. Sometimes they simply want to lie still for hours. And because society often celebrates activity and achievement, many begin blaming themselves. They believe they are weak, that they lack willpower, that they are not strong enough. But modern neuroscience tells a very different story. Research shows that during periods of grief, the brain is actually working harder, not less. Beneath that quiet exterior, an enormous amount of neural resources is being mobilized. The brain is trying to understand what happened, trying to process new memories, trying to adjust old expectations, trying to learn how to live within a reality that has changed. Imagine losing someone you deeply love. For years, your brain has built countless networks connected to that person. Habits, conversations, plans, memories, expectations about the future. When that person is no longer present, the entire system must be reorganized. That is an incredibly complex task, a task that requires tremendous energy. That is why grief is often accompanied by exhaustion, not because you are weak, but because your brain is working overtime. Some scientists even compare grief to running a massive program in the background of a computer. On the surface, everything appears quiet, but underneath, the system is constantly working. And just as a machine requires maintenance after prolonged use, the brain needs a special period of recovery. That period is sleep, especially deep sleep. If daytime is when we experience life, nighttime is when the brain quietly processes those experiences. During deep sleep, the brain begins work that is almost magical. Memories are reorganized, neural connections are adjusted, metabolic waste is cleared away. Intense emotions are processed in ways that conscious awareness cannot achieve while awake. That is why many researchers describe deep sleep as the brain's natural emergency room, a place of repair, a place of recovery, a place of healing. When we are physically injured, the body sends pain signals asking for rest. When we are emotionally wounded, fatigue may serve a similar purpose. It is not the enemy. It is a message, a quiet signal from the nervous system. Slow down, rest, give me time to heal. Sadly, many of us have learned to resist that signal. We drink more coffee, work harder, scroll on our phones longer, force ourselves to be okay, while the body is desperately asking for rest. Jung observed that what human beings resist often becomes stronger. He wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Perhaps this is also true of sadness. The harder we try to deny it, the more energy we consume. The harder we force ourselves to be okay, the harder the brain must work. On the other hand, when we accept that we are hurting, when we allow ourselves to feel sad, when we allow the body to rest, the healing process can finally begin. That does not mean surrender. It does not mean giving up. It does not mean becoming lost in suffering. It simply means cooperating with the natural wisdom of the body, trusting that within us exist healing mechanisms older than any act of will. And that is why, throughout this journey, we will continue exploring a fascinating question. Why does sadness make us sleepier? Why does deep sleep become more important during difficult times? What is happening inside the brain while we sleep? How can restful nights help heal the invisible wounds of the soul? And why is it that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is not to become stronger, but simply to allow yourself to rest? Tonight, we will gently discover the answers, without rushing, without judgment, simply listening to what science and psychology have been trying to tell us. Because perhaps, at this very moment, your sadness is not a sign of breaking apart, but a sign that some part of you has already begun the quiet process of healing. Part 2. The brain automatically demands more deep sleep when you are sad. As we concluded the previous section, we explored an idea that may surprise many people. Sadness is not necessarily a sign of brokenness. It may be a signal that a healing process is quietly unfolding. Just as pain after a physical injury tells the body where care is needed, sadness may be the soul's way of telling us that something needs time to recover. And we also saw that when sadness arrives, the body often responds in a very special way. We become more tired, sleepier, lower in energy, as though everything inside us wishes to slow down. But why? If the brain is the organ that helps us think, analyze, and solve problems, why does it not ask us to become more active when facing emotional pain? Why does it not push us to stay awake longer in search of answers? Why does it keep sending signals that urge us to sleep, to rest, to withdraw from the world for a little while? The answer lies in a beautiful truth that modern neuroscience is beginning to understand more clearly than ever before. The brain is not merely a thinking machine. It is also an extraordinarily sophisticated survival system, a system shaped by millions of years of evolution. And sometimes, it understands what we need better than we do ourselves. Imagine a child who falls and begins to cry. Immediately, the child's body responds. Heart rate changes, hormones change, emotions change. But at the same time, healing mechanisms begin to activate. The body does not wait for the child to understand what is happening. It acts automatically. The same thing happens when the soul is wounded. When we grieve, the brain does not simply register the emotion. It interprets it as a serious biological signal, a sign that the system is under significant strain. And one of the first regions involved in this response is the hypothalamus, a small structure buried deep within the brain, small enough to fit within the size of an almond, yet responsible for countless vital functions. It regulates body temperature, controls hormones, manages hunger, coordinates biological rhythms, and most importantly, it plays a central role in regulating sleep. Whenever you begin feeling sleepy in the evening, part of that signal originates from this tiny region of the brain. But what makes this especially fascinating is that the hypothalamus does not respond only to light or time of day. It also responds to emotion. When suffering lingers, when emotional stress increases, when loss occurs, the hypothalamus begins receiving signals that the system needs restoration, and its response is often not to push you forward. Instead, it gently but firmly guides you toward rest. That is why so many people feel exhausted after a psychological shock, even when they have not engaged in physical labor, even when they have spent most of their day sitting quietly, because that exhaustion does not come from the muscles. It comes from the brain. Carl Jung observed that major psychological upheavals consume tremendous amounts of energy. He called this psychic energy. According to Jung, every powerful emotion requires movement within the soul, a reorganization, an adjustment, a process that consciousness cannot always see. And like every transformation, it requires energy, time, rest. Jung once wrote, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." Perhaps during our saddest days, the mind swings more intensely than ever, trying to rediscover meaning, trying to regain balance, trying to find a new place in the world after something has changed, and that is exhausting work. Today, scientists have discovered that when people experience emotional suffering, the need for deep sleep often increases. Some studies suggest that after periods of significant psychological stress, the brain tends to increase sleep pressure. In other words, it intentionally makes us sleepier, not to escape life, but to create the conditions necessary for recovery. And that is where our journey will continue. Part 3. Sadness drains the brain's energy. As we concluded the previous section, we explored a deeply comforting truth. The brain does not abandon us during our most difficult moments. Quite the opposite. When sadness appears, It quietly activates ancient mechanisms designed to protect and heal us. One of those mechanisms is an increased need for deep sleep, as though the brain is gently drawing us away from the noise of the world and guiding us into a space of restoration that only sleep can provide. But this leads us to an even more intriguing question. Why does sadness make us so tired? Why can a single, emotionally intense day leave us feeling as exhausted as if we had performed heavy physical labor? Why can someone spend the entire day sitting still, barely moving at all, yet feel completely drained when carrying pain within their heart? To understand this, we must journey deeper into the hidden world inside the brain, a world invisible to the naked eye, a world where emotions are not merely psychological experiences, they are genuine biological events. Carl Jung observed that emotions are not something that happen outside the body. He saw them as streams of living energy, movements of the soul capable of transforming a person's entire inner state. He once wrote, "Emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious." In other words, emotions are not merely something we feel, they are something that changes us. And that change requires energy, a great deal of energy. When a painful event occurs, a particular region of the brain begins working more intensely than usual. This region is called the amygdala, a small structure located deep within the temporal lobe. Though modest in size, the amygdala functions as the brain's emotional alarm system. It continuously scans the environment for signals associated with danger, loss, threat, or suffering. During ordinary times, the amygdala helps us respond quickly to important situations. But when sadness persists, especially after significant losses or periods of deep emotional distress, this region tends to become overactive. Imagine a guard assigned to protect a city. During peaceful times, he can rest between shifts. But when war or disaster strikes, that guard must remain awake. He must watch constantly, assess every risk, remain alert at all times. The amygdala functions in much the same way. When sadness appears, it does not simply register the emotion and move on. It continuously processes, continuously analyzes, continuously sends signals, continuously revisits memories associated with loss, continuously evaluates potential threats to our emotional well-being, and all of this activity consumes energy, a tremendous amount of energy. Although the brain accounts for only about 2% of body weight, under normal conditions, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy. This makes the brain one of the most energy-demanding organs in the entire body. Every thought, every memory, every emotion, every decision requires fuel. That fuel is produced in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. If the body were a vast city, ATP would be the electricity powering every system. Without ATP, neurons cannot function, cannot transmit signals, cannot process information, cannot sustain life. And when sadness forces the brain to operate at a higher intensity, ATP consumption increases. This means the brain rapidly burns through its energy reserves. At this point, a lesser-known character enters the story. A small molecule called adenosine. Adenosine is produced whenever ATP is used. In other words, the more energy we consume, the more adenosine accumulates. And fascinatingly, adenosine is one of the body's most powerful sleep-inducing signals. Throughout the day, while we remain awake, adenosine gradually builds up, like grains of sand collecting in the bottom of an hourglass. As the day progresses, adenosine levels rise, and the urge to sleep grows stronger. But when sadness enters the picture, this process accelerates because the brain is using more energy, burning more ATP, producing more adenosine. That is why many people experiencing emotional pain often feel unusually exhausted, not because they are lazy, not because they lack willpower, not because they are weak, but because their brains are spending enormous amounts of energy processing emotion. This is often difficult to see from the outside. A grieving person may simply sit quietly in a chair, doing very little, barely moving. Yet inside them, an entire neurological storm may be unfolding. Memories are being activated, questions are being repeated, old images continue returning. Unresolved emotions repeatedly rise to the surface. And all of this requires energy. Carl Jung described confronting unconscious material as a profoundly demanding journey, because whenever we touch the deepest regions of the soul, the entire psychological system must mobilize its resources to adapt. He once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." But bringing darkness into awareness is demanding work. It requires energy, attention, time, and this is precisely what many people are experiencing when they are sad. What exhausts them is not weakness, it is transformation. In a certain sense, the fatigue that accompanies grief can be viewed as evidence that the brain is working, trying to understand, trying to adapt, trying to reorganize the inner world after something important has changed. This also helps explain why major losses are often accompanied by an increased desire for sleep. As adenosine accumulates more rapidly, the sleep signal becomes stronger. The brain is almost saying, "Give me time, give me an opportunity to rest, give me a chance to repair." And that is not an unreasonable request. It is a biological need, part of our evolutionary design, part of the natural wisdom that has helped human beings survive countless losses throughout history. Perhaps the most comforting insight science offers here is the realization that exhaustion during sadness is not a failure. It is not evidence that you are becoming weaker, quite the opposite. It is evidence that your nervous system is working at full capacity to protect you, to heal you, to help you adapt to life's most difficult experiences. But if sadness truly causes the brain to consume so much energy, if adenosine is genuinely drawing us toward sleep, then what happens when we finally drift into deep sleep? What unfolds during those hours when consciousness falls completely silent? What makes a single restful night sometimes soften emotional pain by the following morning? That is the next doorway we will walk through together. Part 4. Overthinking disrupts sleep. As we concluded the previous section, we discovered an important truth. Sadness is not merely an emotional experience. It is also a biological process that consumes real energy. Every painful memory, every recollection, every wave of emotion rising through the mind requires the brain to work harder than usual. The amygdala remains on constant alert. ATP continues to be consumed. Adenosine steadily accumulates. And as a result, the body sends us a very clear message. Rest, sleep. Give the brain an opportunity to heal. Yet there is a paradox that many people have experienced. The sadder they feel, the harder it becomes to sleep. The more exhausted they are, the longer they remain awake, the more desperately they need rest. The more they think, perhaps you know this feeling. It is late at night. The room is completely quiet. The body is exhausted. The eyes feel heavy. Yet, the mind refuses to stop. An old conversation suddenly returns. A decision made years ago reappears. A hurtful remark comes back as vividly as if it happened today. You begin wondering, if only I had done things differently. If only I had said that. If only it had never happened. And then the mind jumps from the past into the future. What will happen tomorrow? Will everything be okay? Will I get through this? And so it continues. One thought after another. One cycle after the next, like a needle trapped in a groove on an old record, repeating, without end. In modern psychology, this phenomenon is known as rumination, the repetitive recycling of thoughts, the tendency to become trapped inside endless loops of reflection. Rumination is different from problem solving. When we solve problems, we move closer to an answer, but when rumination takes hold, the mind simply circles around the same pain, the same question, the same memory, without truly moving forward. Carl Jung observed a similar phenomenon long before modern neuroscience existed. He noticed that when consciousness attempts to control or understand everything through reason alone, it often becomes trapped inside its own labyrinth. Jung once wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Yet sometimes thinking ceases to be true thinking. It becomes repetition, a wheel that spins endlessly without going anywhere. An inner dialogue that never reaches a conclusion, a desperate effort to find certainty in a world that can never be completely certain." What is particularly fascinating is that modern science has identified a neural mechanism behind this experience. It is called the default mode network, often abbreviated as the DMN. The default mode network is most active when we are not focused on the outside world, when we sit quietly, daydream, reflect, remember, or think about ourselves. Under normal circumstances, the DMN serves an important purpose. It helps us build a sense of identity, understand the story of our lives, plan for the future, reflect on past experiences. But when sadness appears, the DMN can become overloaded. It begins functioning like a magnifying glass that enlarges every negative emotion, every painful memory, every fear, every regret, and this creates a dangerous cycle. You feel sad, so you think more. You think more, so the DMN becomes more active. The DMN becomes more active, so painful emotions feel even more vivid. And when those emotions intensify, sleep becomes even more difficult. In a sense, the brain begins to resemble a guard who refuses to leave his post. Even though the night has grown late, even though the body is exhausted, even though no real danger is present, it continues watching, continues analyzing, continues thinking, continues searching for answers. But there is a problem. Deep sleep only emerges when the brain feels safe enough to let go of vigilance. If part of the nervous system still believes there is a threat that must be resolved, it will resist the transition into deep sleep. This helps explain why so many emotionally distressed people experience the same phenomenon. They are sad but cannot sleep. They are exhausted but cannot sleep. They want to sleep but cannot sleep, not because they have lost the ability to sleep, but because their nervous system has not yet granted itself permission to rest. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker once wrote, "The best bridge between despair and hope is a good night's sleep." It is a profoundly insightful statement, because when we are hurting, most of us assume we need more thinking, more analysis, more answers. But often the brain needs exactly the opposite. It needs to stop thinking, at least for a few hours. It needs the opportunity to carry out its healing work in its own way. Imagine a worker repairing a damaged bridge. If traffic continues crossing non-stop, if the noise never ceases, if activity never pauses, repair becomes almost impossible. Deep sleep is the moment the bridge closes for maintenance, the period during which the brain can work without interruption from conscious awareness. Rumination, however, is like traffic that never stops flowing. It continuously delays recovery. Carl Jung once made a beautiful observation. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Yet there is an important balance hidden within that idea. Even looking inward requires moderation. If we stare endlessly at our pain without allowing it to rest, awakening can become entrapment. Reflection can become obsession. Self-awareness can become exhaustion. That is why the most painful periods of life often require a very special kind of courage. Not the courage to continue thinking, but the courage to stop, the courage to let go, the courage to trust that not every question must be answered tonight. Not every memory must be analyzed right now. Not every wound must be understood immediately. Some wounds need time. Some emotions need to be slept with. Some answers appear only after the brain has been given an opportunity to rest. Perhaps this is one of the most important lessons sleep science is trying to teach us. What heals the mind is not always more thinking. Sometimes, what heals is deeper sleep. For while consciousness constantly seeks to control everything, the brain possesses a far quieter wisdom, a wisdom that knows how to repair what has been wounded, how to organize what has become chaotic, how to soothe what is hurting, provided we allow it to do so. And that brings us to a hopeful question. If deep sleep truly has the power to heal emotions, then what exactly is happening inside the brain while we sleep? How are painful memories processed? How are intense emotions softened? What makes a single night of restorative sleep capable of transforming our mental state by morning? That is the next journey we will explore together. Part 5. Sadness creates inflammation in the brain, and deep sleep is its natural anti-inflammatory medicine. As we concluded the previous section, we explored a paradox that many people have experienced. The sadder we feel, the more exhausted we become, and yet the harder it is to sleep. Thoughts repeat themselves like a wheel, endlessly turning in the darkness. Old memories, lingering regrets, worries about the future. Together, they seem determined to keep the mind awake precisely when it needs rest the most. And we also discovered that what the brain truly needs is not more hours of endless analysis, not more internal debates stretching deep into the night. What it truly needs is deep sleep. But why is deep sleep so important? Why can a single night of restorative sleep sometimes make the world feel lighter by morning? What is happening inside the brain that we cannot see? To answer that question, we must explore a truth that science has only begun to understand clearly in recent decades. Sadness does not live only in the mind. It leaves traces in the body as well, even within the brain itself. When most people hear the word inflammation, they think of something visible, a swollen wound, a sore throat, an irritated patch of skin. But inflammation does not occur only in places we can see. It can also take place quietly within the nervous system. And surprisingly, prolonged emotional distress, especially chronic sadness, appears capable of influencing this process. In recent years, scientists have discovered that when human beings endure prolonged stress or deep emotional suffering, the body begins producing greater amounts of inflammatory molecules. These include interleukin-6, commonly known as IL-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF-alpha, along with many other inflammatory cytokines. Under normal circumstances, these molecules are important parts of the immune system. They help the body fight illness and repair damage. But when they remain elevated for long periods, they may begin producing unwanted effects, like a firefighting team continuing to spray water long after the fire has already been extinguished. At first, they are helping, but if the process continues for too long, that same help can begin creating new problems. What is fascinating is that the brain is not isolated from these changes. It senses them, responds to them, and is sometimes affected by them. This helps explain why many people experiencing prolonged sadness often describe a similar feeling. They say their minds become cloudy, concentration becomes difficult, thinking becomes harder, memory feels less reliable, as though a thin layer of fog has settled over everything. Days pass, yet the mind no longer feels as sharp as it once did. Tasks that were once simple now require effort. Conversations demand more energy. Even small decisions feel exhausting. Today, this phenomenon is often called brain fog, a remarkably accurate term because it describes exactly what many people experience. Not quite pain, not quite illness, but the sensation of trying to see through a dense mist. Carl Jung did not possess the modern biological language we use today, yet he understood deeply the cost that unresolved emotions could impose upon a person. He once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Perhaps something similar occurs with emotional wounds. When they remain unhealed, they continue consuming the resources of the nervous system, continue influencing the body, continue shaping the way we think, feel, and live. And this is where deep sleep enters the story as a silent healer. For centuries, people believed sleep was merely a state of rest, a period during which the brain temporarily shut down. Today, we know this is not true. The brain does not stop working during sleep. In many respects, it becomes even busier. One of the most astonishing discoveries of modern neuroscience is the existence of the glymphatic system. This system can be thought of as the brain's specialized cleaning service. Throughout the day, neurons work continuously, producing countless metabolic byproducts, excess proteins, biological waste, molecules that need to be removed. But because the brain is so occupied processing information while we are awake, effective cleaning cannot fully occur. Only when deep sleep arrives does this system truly become active. Cerebrospinal fluid begins flowing more powerfully through brain tissue, gently carrying away the waste that accumulated throughout the day, like a quiet river flowing through a sleeping city after everyone has gone to bed. No noise, no attention, yet absolutely essential. Researchers have even observed that during deep sleep, the spaces between neurons expand, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to clean the brain more efficiently. This helps explain why so many people feel mentally refreshed after a good night's sleep, not simply because they rested, but because the brain was genuinely cleaned, maintained, repaired, rebalanced. And this becomes especially important when we are grieving, because during those times, the brain is not only processing emotions, it is also managing the biological inflammatory responses that often accompany them. Deep sleep helps reduce that burden, helping regulate immune activity, helping reduce excessive inflammation, helping support the recovery of neural cells, like a forest after a storm. During the day, fallen branches may leave everything looking chaotic, but during the night, nature quietly begins rebuilding. Slowly, silently, patiently, our brains do the same. Matthew Walker once wrote, "Sleep is the greatest legal performance-enhancing drug that most people are probably neglecting. But perhaps during times of sadness, sleep is even more than a performance enhancer. It is a healer, a physician working the night shift, a maintenance crew that never asks for recognition, a rescue system that quietly operates every time we close our eyes." The remarkable thing is that this process continues even when we are unaware of it, even when we feel powerless, even when we believe we are making no progress, even when the pain is still present. Inside the brain, healing mechanisms continue their work. That is why sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is not to force yourself to become stronger, not to force yourself to think more positively, not to demand that you feel okay immediately, but simply to sleep enough, to sleep deeply, and to allow the brain to do what it has evolved to do for millions of years: heal. Yet this brings us to an even deeper question. If deep sleep helps cleanse the brain of inflammatory byproducts and restore the nervous system, could it also be doing something to our painful memories themselves? Are the experiences that hurt us being processed in some way while we sleep? And why do so many people notice that after several nights of good sleep, a painful memory is still there, yet no longer hurts quite as much? That is the next mystery we will explore together. Part 6. Crying is the body's way of preparing for sleep. As we concluded the previous section, we discovered something profoundly beautiful, that during the darkest nights of life, when we feel most helpless, the brain continues working quietly behind the scenes. Cerebrospinal fluid flows gently through neural networks. Waste products are cleared away. Inflammatory traces are softened. Neural cells begin the process of recovery, like a hidden healing team working while we sleep. But before deep sleep can perform this remarkable work, the body often does something else, something deeply human, something ancient, something nearly all of us have experienced. We cry. Perhaps you remember that feeling. One night, after many days of trying to stay strong, after many hours of keeping everything inside, after countless times telling yourself that you had to be okay, suddenly, all it takes is a small memory, a familiar song, an old message, a photograph, a simple phrase, or perhaps just a quiet moment, and then the tears begin to fall. Slowly at first, then more freely. until the emotions finally find a way out. What is remarkable is what often happens afterward. Many people become sleepy, not necessarily happier. Not every problem is solved, but a very particular feeling emerges. Lighter, calmer, softer, as though some part of the body has finally set down a burden it has carried for too long. Why does this happen? Is crying merely an expression of emotion? Or is there a deeper biological wisdom hidden within those tears? Throughout much of human history, tears were viewed mainly through psychological or cultural lenses. They were seen as signs of sadness, suffering, weakness, or sometimes liberation. But modern science has discovered that emotional tears are actually different from other types of tears. The tears we produce when cutting onions, the tears caused by dust entering the eye, the tears brought on by strong wind, and the tears that come from a broken heart. They are not exactly the same. Research suggests that emotional tears contain distinctive biochemical components, including cortisol, a hormone associated with stress. This has led some scientists to propose an intriguing idea. Crying may be one of the body's ways of helping regulate emotional pressure, not in a magical sense, not as a miracle cure, but as part of a natural balancing system. Imagine a pressure cooker. When pressure builds too high inside, it requires a release valve, not because the cooker is broken, but because that is how it protects itself. Crying may function in much the same way. An emotional release valve, a mechanism that helps the nervous system discharge some of the pressure that has accumulated. Carl Jung understood the dangers of suppressing emotions for too long. He once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Perhaps tears appear at the moment the body finally stops resisting, stops holding on so tightly, stops trying to control everything, stops pretending that everything is fine. And when that happens, a series of biological changes begins to unfold. Research suggests that after crying, the nervous system often gradually shifts from a state of activation toward a more restful state. Heart rate begins to slow, breathing becomes deeper, muscle tension decreases, excessive vigilance begins to soften. This is an important process, because when sadness persists, the body often becomes trapped in alarm mode. The sympathetic nervous system remains activated, always preparing for danger, always maintaining tension, always consuming energy. But crying can act as a bridge from stress to rest, from fighting to recovery, from control to surrender. Not only that, many studies suggest that crying may be associated with increased levels of oxytocin, the hormone often called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin promotes feelings of safety, connection, being loved, being protected. It is the hormone released when a mother embraces her child, when loved ones hold one another, when human beings experience closeness. What is fascinating is that even when we cry alone, this biological system may still become activated, as though the body is trying to comfort itself, trying to whisper, "Everything will be okay." You do not have to keep fighting. You are allowed to rest. Alongside this, the body also releases endorphins, natural chemicals capable of soothing pain, not only physical pain, but emotional pain as well. That is why many people experience a strange sense of relief after a long cry. The pain has not disappeared, yet its intensity seems to soften, like powerful waves finally beginning to settle. In a sense, crying is not merely an expression of emotion. It is part of the healing process, part of the biological language the body uses when words are no longer enough. This also helps explain why infants often fall asleep after crying, why many adults become sleepy after emotional release, and why nights filled with tears sometimes lead to the deepest sleep of all. Not by accident, not because of weakness, not because of losing control, but because of biology, because of evolution, because of the wisdom of the nervous system. Carl Jung once said, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. Perhaps tears are part of that journey, part of moving through conflict rather than running from it, part of allowing emotions to exist, to be felt, to be expressed, and ultimately, to be transformed. Unfortunately, many of us grow up believing that crying is a sign of weakness. That strength means never crying. That maturity means always controlling our emotions. But from a biological perspective, that is not entirely true. Crying is not a failure of the nervous system. It is a function of the nervous system, a function refined across millions of years of evolution, a mechanism that has helped human beings survive loss, heartbreak, loneliness, and the unavoidable hardships of life. And perhaps that is why, after crying, so many people feel a gentle wave of sleepiness arise, not because they are completely depleted, but because the body has finally received a signal that the battle is temporarily over, that it can rest, that it can let go, that it can hand the work of healing over to sleep. In the language of biology, tears seem to be saying, it is time to rest, it is time to recover, it is time to let the brain do its work. But if crying is a bridge between sorrow and rest, if tears truly help prepare the body for sleep, then what happens to those who do not cry? What happens when emotions are held inside for too long? Can suppressed feelings affect the quality of sleep? And why is it often the emotions left unexpressed that demand the most work from the brain? Those are the questions we will explore next. Part 7. Depression changes the architecture of sleep. As we concluded the previous section, we explored something deeply beautiful about tears. That sometimes, tears are not signs of weakness. They are the ancient language of the nervous system, the body's way of saying that it has carried too much, endured for too long, and now needs rest. We also saw that after crying, many people begin to feel sleepy. The heart rate slows, tension softens, oxytocin and endorphins increase. The nervous system gradually shifts from a state of struggle into a state of recovery, like a lake that finally becomes calm again after a storm. But there is something interesting. Not everyone who feels sad sleeps well. Not everyone who sleeps a lot recovers. And not every kind of sleep offers the same healing power. There are people who spend many hours in bed, who go to sleep early, sleep late, take naps, sleep whenever they can. Yet when they wake up, they still feel exhausted, still heavy, still as though their brain never truly rested. This is one of the great mysteries that sleep science has been trying to understand for decades. And the answer leads us to a profoundly important subject: the relationship between depression and the structure of sleep. Because what is remarkable is that depression does not merely affect emotions, it changes the way the brain sleeps, changes the way the brain rests, and changes the way the brain heals. In everyday thinking, we often view sleep as a single state, either asleep or awake. But in reality, sleep is a complex journey composed of many different stages, like a symphony with multiple movements, a garden with many ecological layers, a river with many bends and turns. Each stage serves its own purpose. Some stages help restore the body, some strengthen memory, some process emotions, some rebuild the nervous system. Among these stages, two of the most important are deep sleep and REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, the stage during which the eyes move quickly beneath closed eyelids. It is also the stage in which most vivid dreams occur. During REM sleep, the brain becomes highly active. Some regions are almost as active as they are during wakefulness. Many scientists believe REM plays a crucial role in processing memories and emotions, like a film editing studio, a place where the brain reviews the events of the day, sorts them, edits them, stores them, and creates meaning from them. Deep sleep, on the other hand, is more like a repair workshop. This is when powerful delta waves dominate brain activity. This is when the glymphatic system cleanses the brain. This is when growth hormone is released in greater amounts. This is when the body performs much of its physical restoration. A healthy night of sleep requires balance between these two states. Just as a forest needs both rain and sunlight, both seasons of growth and seasons of rest. But unfortunately, depression often disrupts that balance. Sleep studies have repeatedly found a pattern among many people living with depression. They enter REM sleep more quickly than usual. In other words, the brain enters the world of dreams too soon. Before it has spent enough time in deep restorative sleep, they often experience higher REM density, more dreaming, more emotional activity during the night, yet less of the deep restoration the body desperately needs. Imagine a team of workers responsible for maintaining a large building. At night, two groups are supposed to arrive. One group handles paperwork and records, the other repairs the electrical and plumbing systems. But if the paperwork team works all night while the repair team never receives enough time to do its job, the building will slowly deteriorate, even though work is still being done. That is often what happens during depression. The brain continues working, sometimes working extremely hard, but the work of restoration remains incomplete. And what is the result? Many people with depression wake up feeling as though they lived through another entire day while they were asleep. They dream intensely. They process emotions throughout the night. They experience countless images and memories. Yet their bodies remain tired. Their minds remain heavy. Their energy remains low, as though the brain has run an emotional marathon in the darkness, but never truly had the opportunity to rest. Carl Jung likely would not have been surprised by this. After all, he devoted much of his life to the study of dreams. He viewed dreams as letters sent from the unconscious, messages that the deepest layers of the soul attempt to communicate to consciousness. Jung once wrote, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul." But even guiding words require a stable foundation to be heard. A garden cannot consist only of flowers. It also needs soil. A piece of music cannot consist only of melody. It also needs silence. A soul cannot spend all its energy processing emotions. It also needs rest, recovery, renewal, and that is precisely what deep sleep provides. Interestingly, many modern studies suggest that one of the strongest predictors of depression may not lie solely in mood, but also in sleep architecture, the way the brain moves through different stages of sleep, the way it allocates time between REM sleep and deep sleep, as though the soul and sleep are telling the same story in two different languages. One language of emotion, one language of biology, and both point toward the same reality. The nervous system is asking to be healed. Perhaps this is also why many modern approaches to treating depression focus not only on emotions, but on sleep as well. Because when sleep architecture improves, when deep sleep returns, when the brain once again has an opportunity to perform its restorative work, mood often begins to improve as well. Not immediately, not magically, but gradually, like dawn arriving slowly after a long night. Carl Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness." The goal is not to eliminate darkness entirely. The goal is to help the soul become strong enough to move through it. And deep sleep is one of the quietest sources of strength that nature has given us. Because in the end, what causes suffering for many people is not that they sleep too little. It is that they are not receiving the kind of sleep their brains truly need. Many hours of sleep do not automatically mean recovery. Spending long hours in bed does not automatically mean healing. What matters most is the quality of the deepest layers of sleep, the place where the brain is allowed to let go, where the body is allowed to rebuild, where the soul is allowed to rest. But this leads us to an even more fascinating question. If deep sleep is so important, if it plays such a central role in emotional recovery, then why do some people begin waking up in the middle of the night when sadness persists? Why do they awaken at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, or 4 in the morning, unable to fall back asleep? Could this be connected to even deeper biological changes taking place inside the brain? That is the next doorway we will step through together. Part 8. Serotonin, melatonin, and sleep. As we concluded the previous section, we uncovered a rather surprising truth. Not all sleep is the same. Some people sleep for many hours yet still wake feeling exhausted. Some spend most of the night in bed yet feel mentally drained, as though they never rested at all. And we also discovered that depression can alter the natural architecture of sleep, causing the brain to become trapped in prolonged cycles of emotional processing, causing REM sleep to arrive too early, causing deep sleep to become shortened, like a house whose repair crew never receives enough time to finish its work. But if we look even deeper, we find a story that is more subtle still, a story unfolding at the level of chemistry, a place where invisible molecules quietly determine whether we sleep peacefully or not, a place where sadness affects not only emotion, but also the neurotransmitters that orchestrate the entire rhythm of sleep. And within that story, there are two main characters, serotonin and melatonin. Perhaps you have heard of melatonin before. It is often called the sleep hormone, the biological signal that tells the body night has arrived, that it is time to slow down, time to rest, time to release the activities of the day. But what many people do not realize is that melatonin does not appear out of nowhere. It is created from another substance, serotonin. If melatonin is the gentle evening light, then serotonin is the electricity behind that light. If melatonin is the lullaby, then serotonin is the musician playing the song. Without sufficient serotonin, the production of melatonin becomes more difficult, and when that happens, sleep begins to suffer. What makes this especially interesting is that serotonin is not only related to sleep, it is deeply connected to mood, to feelings of well-being, to inner peace, to the ability to experience joy. For many years, scientists have observed that people experiencing prolonged sadness or depression often show significant changes within serotonin-related systems. While the reality is far more complex than the simple explanation that depression is caused by low serotonin, one thing remains clear. Prolonged sadness can disrupt the chemical systems involved in regulating both sleep and emotion. Imagine the brain as a vast garden. During the day, sunlight nourishes the plants. At night, an irrigation system quietly waters the soil. If the water supply begins to diminish, the garden will not die immediately, but over time, the plants become less vibrant, their vitality fades, and the natural balance begins to weaken. Serotonin is much like that water supply. When its balance becomes disrupted, not only are emotions affected, sleep changes as well. That is why so many grieving individuals describe remarkably similar experiences. They lie down in bed. The body is tired, the mind is tired, yet sleep does not arrive. Or if it does, they awaken easily. A small sound, a fleeting dream, a passing thought, and suddenly they are awake, staring into the darkness, watching the ceiling, listening to the minutes pass, feeling exhausted but unable to return to sleep. This is not merely a psychological issue. It is also biological, because the brain is trying to sleep, yet simultaneously lacking some of the chemical support required to maintain stable sleep. Carl Jung observed that whatever happens within the soul is reflected in the body. He did not see human beings as machines made of separate parts. He saw a living whole, an ecosystem, a place where emotions, thoughts, the body, and the unconscious continually influence one another. Jung once wrote, "The psyche and the body are not separate entities. They are one and the same life." Today, that statement feels more relevant than ever, because modern neuroscience continues to demonstrate the same truth. What happens emotionally can alter biological functioning, and biological changes can in turn influence emotions, a circle that cannot be separated. That is why when we are sad, we do not merely feel sadness. We also feel tired. We struggle to sleep. We struggle to concentrate. We struggle to enjoy things that once brought us pleasure. All of these are pieces of the same larger picture, and this creates a painful paradox. The brain needs sleep to recover emotionally, yet the chemical changes produced by prolonged sadness can make sleep increasingly difficult. like someone desperately thirsty standing in the middle of a desert. The more they need something, the harder it becomes to reach. That is also why many people feel frustrated when they hear the advice, just get more sleep, because often they genuinely want to sleep. They sincerely try to sleep, but the brain is no longer operating in its usual way. It is struggling with invisible changes they cannot see. Matthew Walker once wrote, "The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life." But perhaps, for those who are grieving, that statement carries another meaning as well. Not only the length of life, but the quality of recovery. Because sleep is not merely a period of rest. It is the time during which the brain rebuilds itself. And for that rebuilding process to work effectively, the brain requires support from its own internal chemical systems. The hopeful news is that the brain possesses a remarkable capacity for recovery. Serotonin is not a fixed resource. The nervous system is always seeking balance, always adapting, always healing. That is why small habits such as morning sunlight exposure, walking outdoors, gentle physical activity, meaningful social connection, and especially maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, can create changes far deeper than we might imagine. Because every small action sends a message to the brain: you are safe, you can recover, you can sleep, you can heal. And perhaps that is the most beautiful message of this chapter. When sadness lingers, the brain is not working against you. It is not betraying you. It is simply trying to function with fewer resources than before. It wants to sleep. It wants to recover. It wants to heal. But sometimes, it no longer has enough of the chemicals needed to perform that work fully. And that is not your fault. It is part of a journey that countless human beings have walked before you. Yet if serotonin and melatonin influence our ability to sleep well, there is another factor that may be even more powerful. An ancient clock hidden deep within the brain, a system that governs nearly every biological rhythm in human life. Hormones, body temperature, energy, emotion, and sleep itself. That is what we will explore together in the next chapter. Part 9. Loneliness hurts like a physical wound. As we concluded the previous section, we explored a remarkably subtle truth. Sadness is not merely a feeling, it is also a biological process, a transformation taking place within the tiny chemical messengers of the brain. When serotonin declines, melatonin is affected as well. Sleep becomes more fragile, more delicate, more easily disrupted, like a candle flame struggling to shine against the wind. And this helps us understand something important. What happens within the soul never remains only within the soul. It always leaves traces in the body, in the nervous system, in the heartbeat, in the breath, in sleep. But perhaps one of the most astonishing discoveries of modern science is this. The brain does not distinguish as clearly between certain forms of physical pain and emotional pain as we once believed. In other words, to the brain, a broken heart can truly hurt, not metaphorically, but biologically. Perhaps you have experienced this yourself. A breakup, a betrayal, a loss, the departure of someone you love, the ending of a friendship, a long season of loneliness. And then something strange happens. You do not simply feel sad, you feel pain. A pain without a wound, without blood, without broken bones, yet undeniably real. A heaviness in the chest, a tightening in the throat, an emptiness in the stomach, an invisible weight pressing down upon the entire body. For centuries, human beings described these experiences through poetic language. They spoke of a broken heart, heartache, being shattered inside. These expressions were often considered metaphors. Yet modern neuroscience is beginning to discover that they may be closer to the truth than we once imagined. Brain imaging studies reveal that when people experience social rejection, loneliness, or emotional loss, certain regions associated with physical pain also become active, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula, areas involved in processing bodily pain. This does not mean emotional pain and physical pain are identical. but they overlap in remarkable ways. As though the brain uses part of the same neural language to signal something important has been heard. Imagine an infant separated from its caregiver. From an evolutionary perspective, such separation once represented a serious threat to survival. A child alone in the ancient world faced far lower chances of survival. Perhaps that is why the brain evolved to treat social isolation as a form of danger, a form of pain demanding attention, an emergency signal. And hundreds of thousands of years later, that mechanism remains inside each of us. Carl Jung spent many years studying the human need for connection. He did not see people as completely separate individuals. He saw invisible threads linking us together. He once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." It is a beautiful observation, but it also contains another truth. If connection has the power to transform us, then disconnection does as well. When a relationship ends, when a loved one leaves, when loneliness lingers, the brain does not interpret this as a minor event. It interprets it as a change in the environment of survival itself, and the body's response begins. One of the first responses is an increase in cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone. In the short term, it is helpful. It helps the body face challenges, keeps us alert, improves our ability to respond quickly. But when cortisol remains elevated for too long, it begins demanding a price of its own. Sleep suffers, concentration weakens, mood becomes more vulnerable, the immune system becomes less efficient, and exhaustion gradually appears. Interestingly, the body does not stop there. Studies have shown that prolonged loneliness is associated with increased markers of inflammation, much like what we explored earlier. IL-6 rise, inflammatory cytokines increase. The nervous system begins functioning as though it is facing a long-term threat, even though that threat is not a predator, not a natural disaster, not a war, but the absence of connection. This may sound strange, yet from an evolutionary perspective, it makes perfect sense. For millions of years, survival depended upon community. A person separated from the tribe was not merely lonely, they were in danger. And the modern brain still carries that ancient biological memory. That is why loneliness does not only hurt the heart, it also exhausts the body, drains the nervous system, increases the need for rest, for recovery, for deep sleep. Perhaps this explains why so many people experience unusual sleepiness after major emotional losses. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack willpower, but because their nervous systems are spending valuable resources coping with a very real form of pain. A form of pain that the brain takes far more seriously than we often realize. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman has suggested that the need for social connection may be as fundamental as other basic biological needs. Because the human brain was designed to live together, to share, to belong, to connect. And when those bonds are disrupted, the entire system feels it. Carl Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." Perhaps this is one of the deepest definitions of loneliness ever written, because sometimes we remain surrounded by people. We are not physically alone, yet the soul feels separated, unseen, misunderstood, disconnected. And the brain senses this, little by little, day after day, night after night. Yet it is precisely here that a glimmer of hope appears. Because if emotional pain is real, then emotional healing is real as well. If lost connection can wound the nervous system, then restored connection can help it recover. A sincere conversation, a warm embrace, a compassionate listener, a look of understanding. Sometimes these things create far more biological change than we realize, as though the nervous system finally receives a message. You are not alone anymore. You still belong somewhere. You are still safe. And when that message arrives, cortisol begins to fall, tension begins to soften, sleep grows deeper, healing begins. Perhaps that is the most beautiful message of this chapter. A broken heart is not imaginary, not weakness, not exaggeration. It is a real form of pain, a real biological experience, a real neurological response. And because of that, it deserves to be met with gentleness, patience, and compassion. But this brings us to an even deeper question. If loneliness and emotional suffering can change the brain so profoundly, if they can influence hormones, sleep, and immunity, then what happens inside our dreams when the heart is hurting? Are dreams merely random images? Or are they attempting to help the brain process losses that consciousness has not yet overcome? That is the next journey we will explore together. Part 10. Deep sleep rebuilds the brain. As we concluded the previous section, we uncovered a truth that surprises many people. Emotional pain is not merely a psychological experience, it is a biological experience as well. The brain responds to loneliness, loss, and heartbreak through mechanisms remarkably similar to those activated by physical injury. Cortisol rise, inflammation increases. The nervous system must work harder, and as a result, the body demands more deep sleep in order to recover. Perhaps that is why, after the most painful chapters of life, we often experience a very particular kind of fatigue. Not the fatigue of muscles after labor, not the tiredness that follows a long day of work, but an exhaustion that comes from somewhere deeper, as though the entire system needs to be rebuilt. And remarkably, that is exactly what deep sleep is trying to do. For centuries, people viewed sleep as a temporary pause in life, a quiet space between 2 days, a passive state. But modern neuroscience paints a completely different picture. The brain does not stop working while we sleep. In many ways, it enters one of its most important shifts. If daytime is when we live, then nighttime is when the brain repairs the consequences of living. If daytime is when we experience, then nighttime is when the brain learns from those experiences. If daytime is when we expend energy, then nighttime is when we rebuild. There is a special molecule that plays a crucial role in this process. A molecule neuroscientists often call fertilizer for the brain. Its name is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The name may sound complex, but its role is surprisingly easy to imagine. Picture the brain as a vast forest. Each neuron is a tree. Each neural connection is a pathway linking those trees together. Within that forest, BDNF is like rainfall, like nourishment, like sunlight, helping everything grow. Without BDNF, neural connections become weaker, less adaptable, less capable of recovery. But when BDNF increases, the brain becomes more flexible. Learning improves, adaptation improves, healing improves as well. What is fascinating is that one of the times BDNF becomes most active is during deep sleep. When we sink into the deepest stages of sleep, when delta waves spread across the cortex, when the outside world slowly disappears, the brain begins its work of reconstruction. New neural connections are strengthened. Unnecessary connections are pruned away. Learning networks are reorganized, like a patient gardener tending a garden in the darkness. No one sees it, no one hears it. Yet by morning, everything is different. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the transformation that takes place within human beings. He believed the soul was not a fixed structure. It is always changing, always maturing, always being reborn. He once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Today, neuroscience is revealing something remarkably similar. The brain is not fixed. It can change, reorganize, adapt, renew itself. And deep sleep is one of the most important conditions that allows this process to happen, especially after emotional upheaval, especially after periods of grief, especially during moments when we feel broken apart. Because it is precisely then that the brain must build new pathways, new understandings, new connections with life itself. One of the structures that benefits most from deep sleep is the hippocampus. the brain region central to memory formation, learning, and the organization of experience. The hippocampus is like a devoted librarian. Every day, it receives countless pieces of information, memories, emotions, images, sounds, conversations, events, experiences. Everything passes through it. But if that librarian never receives rest, if new books continue arriving without time for organization, the library quickly becomes chaotic. That is what happens when sleep is insufficient. And the opposite is also true. When deep sleep arrives in abundance, the hippocampus finally has the opportunity to perform its work. It organizes, categorizes, stores, creates meaning, helping the brain learn from what it has experienced. This becomes especially important when we are grieving, because grief is not merely an emotion. It is also a lesson, a shift in the way we understand the world, a new chapter in the story of our lives. And to move into that new chapter, the brain needs time to redraw its own map. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker once wrote, "Sleep is the price we pay for learning." But perhaps during the most painful chapters of life, sleep is also the price we pay for growth, because every loss forces the brain to learn something new. Every challenge requires adaptation. Every wound leaves behind new questions. And it is during deep sleep that those questions begin to be processed, not through words, not through logic, but through real physical changes in neural networks. That is why sometimes, after weeks or months of grief, we suddenly realize that we have changed. Not because the pain disappeared, but because the brain changed, learned something, adapted, built new pathways, discovered a new way to continue living. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming oneself, a journey not toward returning to who we once were, but toward becoming someone new after everything we have experienced. And what is beautiful is that the brain is doing something very similar. Night after night, sleep after sleep, delta wave after delta wave, connection after connection, BDNF molecule after BDNF molecule, all contributing to that quiet rebirth. Perhaps that is why rest is not a delay in life. It is not laziness, not weakness, not standing still. Quite the opposite. Rest is one of the most constructive activities a human being can engage in. Because while we believe we are doing nothing, the brain is quietly rebuilding itself, like a city reconstructing after a storm, like a forest growing back after fire, like spring preparing itself beneath the frozen soil of winter. All of these things happen in silence, yet none of them are passive, none of them are meaningless, none of them are wasted. And perhaps that is the most important message of this chapter. When life leaves you exhausted, when sadness makes you want to lie down, when the mind feels depleted, it does not necessarily mean that you are falling behind. It may simply mean that the brain is doing what it needs to do, repairing, rebuilding, preparing a stronger version of you. But that leads us to an even deeper question. If deep sleep truly rebuilds the brain, if it helps create new neural connections, if it teaches us how to adapt to loss, then what happens when we are chronically deprived of sleep during periods of grief? What price does the brain pay? And why can prolonged sleep deprivation make sadness feel far heavier than it otherwise would? That is the next journey we will explore together. Part 11. Deep sleep softens emotional pain. As we concluded the previous section, we discovered something truly remarkable. That during the hours when we sink deeply into sleep, the brain does not stop working at all. Quite the opposite. It enters one of its most important periods of activity. BDNF increases. New neural connections are formed. The hippocampus recovers. Memories are reorganized. Experiences are stored. Lessons are preserved. Deep sleep is like a team of architects working in the darkness, quietly, patiently, unseen by anyone. Yet by morning, the brain has changed ever so slightly. Stronger, more adaptable, more prepared for a new day. But a deeper question awaits us. If sleep can rebuild the brain, Can it also heal emotional wounds? Can a broken heart be helped by deep sleep? Can the most painful memories of our lives become gentler over time, not only because time passes, but because of the nights we spend resting? The answer, offered by modern science, is astonishing. Yes, not in a magical way, not by erasing the past, but in a far more subtle way. A way that the brain has evolved over millions of years to protect us from becoming trapped forever in suffering. Perhaps you have experienced this yourself. A painful memory, a breakup, a betrayal, a loss. At one point in your life, merely thinking about it caused your chest to tighten, your throat to close, tears to rise. Yet months later, years later, you still remember. You remember clearly. You remember the details, the face, the voice, the feeling, and yet something strange has happened. The memory remains, but the pain is no longer exactly the same. The wound aches less than it once did. What happened? Did time heal everything, or was something else taking place within the darkness of countless nights? Today, neuroscientists believe that part of the answer lies within sleep itself, particularly deep sleep and the REM cycles that follow. Because the brain does not merely store memories, it continuously reshapes the emotional relationship attached to those memories. In other words, the brain is not only asking, "What happened?" It is also asking, "How should I feel about what happened?" And that second question often changes over time. Matthew Walker once described one of the most extraordinary functions of sleep with a beautiful phrase: "Sleep is overnight therapy." It is a wonderful way to describe what occurs, because while we sleep, the brain performs something remarkably similar to the work of a patient therapist. It revisits memories, but this time in a safer environment, with less stress, less cortisol, less survival-driven alarm. Like returning to look at a mountain after safely descending from its dangerous slopes. The landscape remains the same, but the perspective has changed. One of the central figures in this process is the hippocampus. The structure we encountered in the previous chapter. The hippocampus serves as the keeper of stories. It records what happened, where it happened, when it happened, and with whom. But alongside the hippocampus sits the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center. The amygdala is responsible for attaching powerful emotions to memories, especially fear, pain, loss, and emotional injury. When a heartbreaking event occurs, the amygdala almost engraves that emotional intensity into memory, like using red ink to mark a page in a book. That is why painful memories often feel so vivid. They are recorded in the language of strong emotion. But if every painful memory retained its original intensity forever, human beings would never be able to move forward. We would remain trapped inside the worst moments of our lives. So the brain developed another mechanism, a gentler mechanism, a wiser mechanism, a more compassionate mechanism. It keeps the lesson, but softens the pain. It preserves the memory, but gradually reduces the emotional intensity. It keeps the story, but heals the wound. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." This is not merely a philosophical statement. Today, it also carries profound neurological meaning, because the brain is actively trying to help us become more than the events that happen to us. It does not deny the past. It does not erase memories, but it helps prevent us from becoming permanently identified with our pain. During deep sleep, neural networks are constantly being reorganized. Emotional memories are gradually transferred from an emergency state into long-term storage. Like a file once stamped urgent now being moved into the historical archives, the information remains, but the alarm bells no longer ring endlessly. Perhaps this is why, after periods of intense suffering, the first thing that often improves is sleep, and only afterward do emotions begin to improve, not the other way around, because sleep itself is part of the healing process, part of restoration, part of transforming pain into wisdom. Jung spent much of his life studying the symbols that appear in dreams. He believed that the unconscious does not merely store wounds, it also seeks to heal them. He once wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." Perhaps behind that hidden door, these silent healing processes are taking place. We do not always notice them, we do not always remember them, but they continue nonetheless, night after night, little by little, like a wound on the skin. We do not witness each individual cell rebuilding itself. Yet one day, we realize the wound has healed. The soul may work in much the same way. The most painful memories do not disappear. They become part of the story of our lives, but they are no longer the center of that story. They become chapters we have read, rather than chapters we are still living. That is perhaps the greatest gift deep sleep offers. Not forgetting, but transformation, not erasing the past, but changing our relationship with it, not making pain disappear, but making pain something we can carry, something we can live beside, something we can understand, something we can eventually move beyond. Perhaps this is why many ancient cultures viewed sleep as a sacred form of healing. Human intuition understood long before science could explain it, that when we sleep, the brain is not simply resting, it is caring for the most wounded parts of us, soothing the injuries that daylight could not fully heal, helping us wake a little lighter, a little calmer, a little stronger. But this leads us to a very important question. If sleep has the power to soften emotional pain, if the brain truly uses the darkness of night to heal, then why do so many grieving people resist their own need for rest? Why do they force themselves to keep working, keep thinking, keep carrying burdens? And what happens when we fail to give the brain enough time to perform this healing work? That is the next doorway we will walk through together. Phần 11. Giấc ngủ sâu làm dịu nỗi đau cảm xúc. Khi kết thúc phần trước, chúng ta đã cùng nhau khám phá một điều thật kỳ diệu, rằng trong những giờ phút chúng ta chìm sâu vào giấc ngủ, bộ não hoàn toàn không ngừng hoạt động. Ngược lại, nó bước vào một trong những giai đoạn làm việc quan trọng nhất của mình. BDNF gia tăng. Những kết nối thần kinh mới được hình thành, hồi hải mã, hippocampus, được phục hồi. Những ký ức được sắp xếp lại, những trải nghiệm được lưu giữ, những bài học được bảo tồn. Giấc ngủ sâu giống như một đội ngũ kiến trúc sư làm việc trong bóng tối, âm thầm, kiên nhẫn, không ai nhìn thấy. Nhưng khi bình minh đến, bộ não đã thay đổi đôi chút, mạnh mẽ hơn, linh hoạt hơn, sẵn sàng hơn cho một ngày mới. Nhưng có một câu hỏi sâu sắc hơn đang chờ chúng ta phía trước. Nếu giấc ngủ có thể tái tạo não bộ, liệu nó có thể chữa lành những vết thương cảm xúc hay không? Liệu một trái tim tan vỡ có thể được nâng đỡ bởi những giấc ngủ sâu? Liệu những ký ức đau đớn nhất trong cuộc đời có thể trở nên dịu dàng hơn theo thời gian? Không chỉ vì thời gian trôi qua, mà còn nhờ những đêm nghỉ ngơi. Câu trả lời mà khoa học hiện đại mang đến thật đáng kinh ngạc. Đó là có, không phải theo cách thần kỳ, không phải bằng cách xóa bỏ quá khứ, mà theo một cách tinh tế hơn rất nhiều. Một cách mà bộ não đã tiến hóa qua hàng triệu năm để bảo vệ chúng ta khỏi việc bị mắc kẹt mãi mãi trong đau khổ. Có lẽ bạn đã từng trải qua điều này. Một ký ức đau buồn, một cuộc chia tay, một sự phản bội, một mất mát. Đã có lúc trong cuộc đời, chỉ cần nghĩ đến nó thôi cũng khiến lồng ngực thắt lại, cổ họng nghẹn lại, nước mắt dâng lên. Nhưng rồi nhiều tháng sau, nhiều năm sau, bạn vẫn nhớ, bạn nhớ rất rõ, bạn nhớ từng chi tiết, khuôn mặt ấy, giọng nói ấy, cảm giác ấy. Và rồi một điều kỳ lạ xảy ra, ký ức vẫn còn đó, nhưng nỗi đau không còn giống như trước, vết thương không còn nhức nhối như ngày nào. Điều gì đã xảy ra? Có phải thời gian đã chữa lành tất cả, hay còn điều gì khác đang âm thầm diễn ra trong bóng tối của vô số đêm dài? Ngày nay, các nhà thần kinh học tin rằng một phần câu trả lời nằm ngay trong giấc ngủ, đặc biệt là giấc ngủ sâu và các chu kỳ REM diễn ra sau đó. Bởi bộ não không chỉ lưu giữ ký ức, nó còn liên tục điều chỉnh mối liên hệ cảm xúc gắn liền với ký ức ấy. Nói cách khác, bộ não không chỉ hỏi điều gì đã xảy ra, nó còn hỏi tôi nên cảm thấy thế nào về điều đã xảy ra. Và câu hỏi thứ hai ấy thường thay đổi theo thời gian. Matthew Walker từng mô tả một trong những chức năng kỳ diệu nhất của giấc ngủ bằng một cụm từ rất đẹp. Sleep is overnight therapy. Giấc ngủ là liệu pháp trị liệu diễn ra qua đêm. Đó là một cách diễn đạt tuyệt vời. Bởi trong khi chúng ta ngủ, bộ não đang thực hiện một công việc rất giống với một nhà trị liệu đầy kiên nhẫn. Nó đưa những ký ức ra xem xét lại. Nhưng lần này, trong một môi trường an toàn hơn, ít căng thẳng hơn, ít cortisol hơn, ít phản ứng, sinh tồn hơn. Giống như việc quay lại ngắm một ngọn núi sau khi đã an toàn bước xuống khỏi sườn dốc hiểm trở. Ngọn núi vẫn vậy, nhưng góc nhìn đã khác. Một trong những nhân vật trung tâm của quá trình này là hippocampus, cấu trúc mà chúng ta đã gặp ở phần trước. Hippocampus giống như người lưu giữ những câu chuyện. Nó ghi lại điều gì đã xảy ra ở đâu, khi nào và với ai. Nhưng bên cạnh hippocampus còn có amygdala, trung tâm báo động cảm xúc của bộ não. Amygdala chịu trách nhiệm gắn những cảm xúc mạnh mẽ vào ký ức, đặc biệt là nỗi sợ, nỗi đau, sự mất mát và những tổn thương cảm xúc khi một biến cố đau lòng xảy ra. Amygdala gần như khắc sâu cường độ cảm xúc ấy vào ký ức, giống như dùng mực đỏ đánh dấu một trang sách. Đó là lý do tại sao những ký ức đau buồn thường sống động đến vậy. Chúng được ghi lại bằng ngôn ngữ của cảm xúc mãnh liệt. Nhưng nếu mọi ký ức đau khổ đều giữ nguyên cường độ ấy mãi mãi, con người sẽ không thể tiếp tục tiến về phía trước. Chúng ta sẽ mãi mắc kẹt trong những ngày tồi tệ nhất của cuộc đời mình. Vì thế, bộ não đã phát triển một cơ chế khác, một cơ chế dịu dàng hơn, khôn ngoan hơn, nhân hậu hơn. Nó giữ lại bài học, nhưng làm dịu nỗi đau. Nó lưu giữ ký ức, nhưng dần dần giảm bớt cường độ cảm xúc. Nó giữ lại câu chuyện, nhưng chữa lành vết thương. Carl Jung từng nói, tôi không phải là những gì đã xảy ra với tôi là những gì tôi lựa chọn để trở thành. Đó không chỉ là một tuyên ngôn triết học. Ngày nay, câu nói ấy còn mang ý nghĩa sâu sắc dưới góc nhìn thần kinh học, bởi bộ não thực sự đang cố gắng giúp chúng ta trở thành nhiều hơn những biến cố đã xảy ra với mình. Nó không phủ nhận quá khứ, nó không xóa bỏ ký ức, nhưng nó giúp chúng ta không bị đồng nhất mãi mãi với nỗi đau ấy. Trong những giấc ngủ sâu, các mạng lưới thần kinh liên tục được tái tổ chức. Những ký ức cảm xúc dần được chuyển từ trạng thái khẩn cấp sang trạng thái lưu trữ dài hạn. Giống như một hồ sơ từng được đóng dấu khẩn cấp, nay được chuyển vào kho lưu trữ lịch sử. Thông tin vẫn còn đó, nhưng chuông báo động không còn vang lên mãi nữa. Có lẽ đó là lý do vì sao sau những giai đoạn đau khổ sâu sắc, điều đầu tiên thường được cải thiện là giấc ngủ. Và chỉ sau đó cảm xúc mới dần hồi phục, không phải theo chiều ngược lại. Bởi giấc ngủ chính là một phần của quá trình chữa lành, một phần của sự phục hồi, một phần của hành trình biến nỗi đau thành trí tuệ. Jung đã dành phần lớn cuộc đời để nghiên cứu những biểu tượng xuất hiện trong giấc mơ. Ông tin rằng vô thức không chỉ lưu giữ những tổn thương, nó còn tìm cách chữa lành chúng. Ông từng viết, giấc mơ là một cánh cửa nhỏ ẩn sâu trong những góc khuất bí mật nhất của tâm hồn. Có lẽ phía sau cánh cửa ấy, những quá trình chữa lành thầm lặng vẫn đang diễn ra. Chúng ta không phải lúc nào cũng nhận ra, không phải lúc nào cũng nhớ được, nhưng chúng vẫn tiếp tục, đêm này qua đêm khác, từng chút một, giống như một vết thương trên da. Chúng ta không nhìn thấy từng tế bào đang tái tạo, nhưng rồi một ngày nào đó, ta nhận ra vết thương đã lành. Tâm hồn có lẽ cũng vận hành theo cách tương tự. Những ký ức đau đớn nhất không biến mất, chúng trở thành một phần trong câu chuyện cuộc đời, nhưng không còn là trung tâm của câu chuyện ấy. Chúng trở thành những chương đã đọc, chứ không còn là chương mà ta đang sống. Đó có lẽ là món quà lớn nhất mà giấc ngủ sâu mang lại. Không phải sự lãng quên, mà là sự chuyển hóa. Không phải xóa bỏ quá khứ, mà là thay đổi mối quan hệ của chúng ta với quá khứ. Không phải làm biến mất nỗi đau, mà là khiến nỗi đau trở thành điều chúng ta có thể mang theo, có thể sống cùng, có thể thấu hiểu, có thể vượt qua. Có lẽ đó là lý do vì sao nhiều nền văn hóa cổ đại luôn xem giấc ngủ như một hình thức chữa lành thiêng liêng. Trực giác của con người đã hiểu từ rất lâu trước khi khoa học có thể giải thích rằng khi chúng ta ngủ, bộ não không chỉ đơn thuần nghỉ ngơi, nó đang chăm sóc những phần tổn thương nhất bên trong chúng ta, đang xoa dịu những vết thương mà ban ngày chưa kịp chữa lành, đang giúp chúng ta thức dậy nhẹ nhàng hơn đôi chút, bình yên hơn đôi chút, mạnh mẽ hơn đôi chút. Nhưng điều đó lại dẫn chúng ta đến một câu hỏi rất quan trọng. Nếu giấc ngủ có khả năng làm dịu nỗi đau cảm xúc, nếu bộ não thực sự sử dụng màn đêm để chữa lành, vậy tại sao rất nhiều người đang đau buồn lại chống lại chính nhu cầu nghỉ ngơi của mình? Tại sao họ ép bản thân tiếp tục làm việc, tiếp tục suy nghĩ, tiếp tục gánh vác? Và điều gì sẽ xảy ra khi chúng ta không cho bộ não đủ thời gian để thực hiện công việc chữa lành ấy? Đó sẽ là cánh cửa tiếp theo mà chúng ta cùng nhau bước qua. Part 12. Factors that help you sleep more deeply. As we concluded the previous section, we discovered something deeply comforting. Sleep does not erase the painful memories of life. It does not erase the people who have gone away. It does not erase loss. It does not erase the moments when the heart was broken. But sleep does something even more subtle than that. It keeps the story, yet softens the pain. It preserves the lesson, yet gentles the wound. It helps us wake up one day and realize that what once made us cry every night has become only a quiet memory, still present, yet no longer ruling the soul. And then a natural question arises. If deep sleep possesses such profound healing power, if it is the emergency room of the brain, the garden where neural connections are reborn, the place where emotional wounds are soothed, then how can we invite more deep sleep into our lives? How can we help the brain perform the healing work that nature designed it to do? Perhaps the answer begins with a very simple truth. Sleep does not begin when we go to bed. It begins when we wake up. Many people think of sleep as something that happens only at night, but modern science shows us that the quality of sleep is built throughout the entire day. Every ray of morning sunlight, every step we take, every breath, every conversation, every emotion, all are quietly preparing the sleep that will arrive many hours later. Just as a garden cannot bloom through a few minutes of care at the end of the day, deep sleep is the result of countless small things accumulated over time. One of the most powerful factors is physical movement. It does not require intense workouts. You do not need to run marathons. You do not need to become an athlete. A long walk, a gentle workout, a few stretches. Sometimes that is enough to make a meaningful difference. Because when the body moves, many biological processes are activated. Body temperature changes. Neurotransmitters are regulated. Stress levels decline. And perhaps most importantly, the brain begins accumulating a healthy and natural sleep drive. Like a child who sleeps deeply after a joyful day spent outdoors, not because they are forced to, but because their body is ready. Carl Jung spent many hours walking in nature around Lake Zurich. It was more than a habit. It was a way of connecting with the deepest parts of his soul. He once wrote, "Nature is not matter only. She is also spirit." Perhaps that is why outdoor movement often feels uniquely restorative, because it nourishes both body and soul at the same time. And when we speak of nature, we cannot ignore morning sunlight. In the modern world, many people wake up and the first thing they see is a phone screen. But hundreds of thousands of years of evolution prepared the brain for a different signal, sunlight. When morning light enters the eyes, the biological clock receives a clear message that a new day has begun. Serotonin rises, circadian rhythms become synchronized, and later that evening, melatonin can be produced at the proper time. A seemingly small habit, yet one capable of transforming the entire quality of sleep, like adjusting the hands of a finely crafted clock. There is another factor that Carl Jung would likely have appreciated deeply: stillness. In the later years of his life, Jung often spoke about the importance of listening to the inner world. Today, science describes part of this process through practices such as meditation and slow breathing. When we sit quietly, when the breath becomes slower, when attention returns to the present moment, the sympathetic nervous system begins to settle. Heart rate gradually slows. Cortisol decreases. The brain receives a message that danger has passed. And this is precisely the state that prepares us for deep sleep. It is no coincidence that many studies show mindfulness meditation can improve sleep quality, because deep sleep and meditation share the same trusted companion, a peaceful nervous system. Yet perhaps one of the most beautiful discoveries of science has nothing to do with techniques at all. It has to do with connection. Human beings are social creatures. Our brains were designed to live together, to belong, to be seen, to be loved. A heartfelt conversation, someone who truly listens, a warm embrace, a gentle and understanding gaze. Sometimes, these create biological changes more powerful than many medications. When we feel safe with another person, oxytocin rises, cortisol falls. The nervous system shifts into a state of rest and restoration. This helps explain why many people sleep better when they are near those they love. And it also explains why prolonged loneliness often makes sleep more fragile. Recent studies have even found that petting an animal can create a similar effect. A dog resting beside your feet, a cat curled quietly nearby, a small creature that trusts and loves you unconditionally. Sometimes that alone is enough to calm the nervous system, enough to create a sense of belonging, enough to help the body release the burdens of a long day. Another factor often underestimated is gratitude. At first glance, gratitude may seem more spiritual than biological, yet the two are deeply connected. When the mind focuses on what is present rather than what is missing, the brain's anxiety networks become less active, the nervous system becomes calmer, and sleep arrives more easily. Not because life is perfect, but because the brain no longer feels compelled to stand guard against imagined dangers. Alongside psychological and behavioral factors, nutrition also plays an important role. Magnesium participates in hundreds of biochemical reactions throughout the body, including many processes involved in nervous system relaxation. Omega-3 fatty acids support the health of neural cells and help regulate inflammation. They are not miracles, but they are small bricks that help build the foundation of a healthy nervous system. And then there is the sleep environment itself. Perhaps this is where simplicity creates the greatest results. A cool room, around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, a dark space, a quiet environment. These things may sound ordinary, yet the brain loves such ordinary things, because throughout evolutionary history, darkness has always signaled that it is time to rest. Temperatures fall, light disappears, the world grows quiet. The body learns to associate these signals with sleep. However, just as there are things that nourish sleep, there are also things that quietly destroy it. One of them is alcohol. Many people believe alcohol helps them sleep. In reality, it often only helps them fall asleep faster, while disrupting the most important stages of deep sleep, like pushing someone into sleep by force, yet preventing them from completing the healing journey that sleep was meant to provide. Blue light from phones and screens is another familiar culprit. Every time we stare into a bright screen in the darkness, the brain receives a message that daytime has not yet ended. Melatonin production is delayed. The biological clock becomes confused. Sleep becomes shallower, more fragile, more easily broken. Long daytime naps can create a similar effect because they reduce the natural sleep pressure that accumulates throughout the day, leaving the body insufficiently sleep-hungry at night. Yet perhaps the greatest enemy of sleep is one we have encountered many times throughout this journey: overthinking. Endless internal conversations, events that should have ended long ago, replayed over and over again, fears that have never happened, questions without answers, worries without an ending. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." But awakening does not mean becoming trapped inside thought. Awakening means recognizing when it is time to reflect and when it is time to rest. Because there are some problems that cannot be solved through more thinking. They can only be healed through time, through sleep, through recovery. And perhaps that is the most beautiful message of this chapter. Deep sleep is not something we can force. It is like a shy friend. The harder we chase it, the further away it runs. But when we create the right conditions, a body that has moved, a mind that has been calmed, a nervous system that feels safe, a quiet room, a grateful heart, sleep finds its way to us, quietly, naturally, gently, like nightfall settling upon a still lake. Yet this leads us to one final and important question. If deep sleep possesses such powerful healing abilities, if it can soften emotional pain, reduce inflammation, rebuild the brain, and restore the soul, then what happens when we truly allow ourselves to rest long enough? Can that healing transform the way we see life itself? That is what we will explore together in the next chapter, Part 13, The Deep Philosophy of Sleep. As we conclude the previous chapter, we realize how many layers of sleep we have traveled through together. We have spoken about hormones, neurotransmitters, delta brainwaves, and the silent regions of the brain working in the darkness. We have explored how sadness changes sleep, how sleep softens pain, and how the brain quietly heals itself night after night. And perhaps by now, one truth is beginning to emerge. Sleep is not merely a biological phenomenon. It is also an existential experience, a profound lesson in what it means to be human. Because if we look closely, sleep is one of the strangest things we do every single day. Each evening, we turn off the lights, close our eyes, release control, and surrender ourselves to a state we cannot fully command. From the perspective of ordinary logic, this is remarkable, because throughout most of life, human beings strive to control things, control work, control the future, control emotions, control what has not happened yet. Control what has already happened. Yet every night, in order to sleep, we must do the opposite. We must let go. No one can force themselves to sleep through willpower. You can force yourself to keep your eyes open, force yourself to think, force yourself to work, but you cannot force yourself to sleep. Sleep only arrives when striving ends, when control softens, when the body feels safe enough to surrender. Perhaps that is why sleep carries such a profound philosophical lesson within it, that not everything important in life is achieved through effort. Some things arrive only when we stop trying so hard, like love, like peace, like acceptance, and like sleep. Part 14. Deep sleep is medicine for sadness. And so, we have finally reached the end of a very long journey together. A journey that began with what seemed like a simple question. Why do we want to sleep more when we are sad? At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than an emotional reaction, a feeling of exhaustion after days of suffering, a desire to lie down, to close our eyes, to step away from the world for a little while. But as we ventured deeper into the science of the brain, as we explored the deepest layers of sleep, as we viewed everything through the lens of psychology and biology, we began to realize that the story is far bigger than it first appeared. Because what is happening is not merely emotional. What is happening is that the entire body is responding to pain. When the heart is wounded, the brain changes. Hormones change. The immune system changes. Neurotransmitters change. The regions of the brain that process emotion change. Even the way we sleep changes. This means that sadness is not merely a psychological experience. It is a whole-body biological experience, an experience felt by the entire human being. Perhaps this is the first thing and the most important thing we should remember. Sadness is not weakness. In a world that constantly praises strength, constantly urges us to stay positive, constantly tells us to keep moving forward, sadness is often misunderstood. Many people feel ashamed of their suffering. Many blame themselves for not feeling happy immediately. Many see tears as failure, and fatigue as weakness. But science tells a different story, a more humane story, a gentler story. It says that sadness is a signal that something important has happened. Something needs to be processed. Something needs to be healed. Carl Jung once wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Perhaps sadness is like those roots, not pleasant, but necessary. A part of life that helps us grow. A part that helps us understand ourselves more deeply. A part that helps us become more fully human. And if sadness is not weakness, then exhaustion is not laziness. This may be something many people desperately need to hear, especially during the hardest chapters of life, when we lose someone we love, when relationships end, when we fail, when we suffer, when we become emotionally exhausted. The body often asks for more sleep, more rest, more time to recover. Yet instead of listening, we often resist. We tell ourselves we must be stronger, try harder, work harder, recover faster. But the body does not think that way. The brain does not think that way. The nervous system does not think that way. Because from a biological perspective, what is occurring is a crisis that requires repair. A real crisis. Not imaginary, not exaggerated, not weakness. Throughout this journey, we have discovered that sadness can trigger countless changes within the body. Neuroinflammation increases. Inflammatory cytokines become more active. Cortisol rise. Circadian rhythms become disrupted. Serotonin declines. Melatonin is affected. Immune function weakens. Emotion processing brain regions become overworked. The amygdala continues sounding its alarm. The hippocampus struggles to organize immense amounts of emotional memory. The entire system is working overtime. And because of that, the body begins sending a message. A very simple message. I need rest. Not to escape, not to surrender, but to repair. Because amid all these systems, amid all these wounds, there is one remarkable state in which nearly every major healing process can occur simultaneously: deep sleep. During deep sleep, the brain is cleansed, neural waste products are removed, inflammation is regulated, new neural connections are built, BDNF increases, memories are reorganized, emotions are processed, hormones are rebalanced, the immune system is restored. No medication can accomplish all of these things at once. No conversation can accomplish all of them. No amount of effort can replace them. Deep sleep is one of the few states in which the entire body enters healing mode together. Perhaps that is why Matthew Walker once wrote, "Sleep is the single most effective thing we can do to reset our brain and body health each day." But for those who are suffering, sleep may be even more than a reset. It is a refuge. A place where the nervous system can stop fighting. A place where the soul can finally put down its burdens. A place where the most wounded parts of ourselves are gently cared for. Carl Jung spent his life studying the healing of the human soul, and perhaps he would not be surprised to discover that nature placed such a powerful healing mechanism within every person. No training required, no purchase necessary, no distant search. It has always been there, every night, waiting for us to allow it to do its work. Perhaps the greatest gift this journey offers is not knowledge, but relief. The relief of understanding that many of the things you are experiencing are completely normal. If you feel exhausted after a loss, that is normal. If you want to sleep more during periods of grief, that is normal. If your body asks for rest, that is normal. If you cannot be strong immediately, that is normal too, because your body is not working against you. Your brain is not betraying you. Your nervous system is not failing you. Quite the opposite. They are trying to protect you, trying to bring you back into balance, trying to heal you in the way nature has prepared for millions of years. And so, as we bring tonight's journey to a close, perhaps we can carry one simple sentence with us. A sentence that captures the entire spirit of this video. A sentence to remember during difficult nights, lonely nights, sleepless nights. Nights when the heart still aches. Remember this. When you are sad, your body is not betraying you through exhaustion. It is trying to save you through sleep. And perhaps tonight, if your eyes are beginning to grow heavy, if your breathing is becoming slower, if your mind is becoming quieter, allow yourself to rest. You do not need to solve everything right now. You do not need to understand everything tonight. You do not need to heal everything at once. Tomorrow will still arrive, and while you sleep, your brain will continue doing its work, quietly, patiently, and lovingly, just as it has done since the very first day you entered this world. And so our journey tonight is gently coming to an end. Perhaps when you first began this video, you simply wanted an answer to a question. Why do human beings need more deep sleep when they are sad? But along the way, we discovered something much greater. We discovered that sadness is not a mistake of the mind, not weakness, not something that must be eliminated immediately. Sadness is a natural part of life, a natural part of loving, a natural part of losing, a natural part of being human. Carl Jung believed that every emotion carries a message. Every wound carries a lesson. Every darkness contains the possibility of leading us toward deeper understanding. Perhaps sadness is no different. It does not arrive to destroy us. It arrives to tell us that something within needs attention, needs healing, needs compassion, needs love. Sometimes we spend too long trying to be strong, too long enduring, too long pretending to be fine, but the body is always honest. It does not know how to lie. It does not know how to wear masks. It does not know how to pretend. And when suffering lasts too long, the body begins through long yawns, through heavy eyelids, through the desire to rest. Not because it is fighting us, but because it is protecting us. Across millions of years of evolution, the human brain learned something profoundly important. Not every wound is healed through action. Some wounds are healed through time. Some pains are healed through rest. Some injuries are healed only within the peaceful darkness of deep sleep. While we sleep, the brain continues working, organizing chaotic memories, softening intense emotions, cleaning away the traces of stress, rebuilding neural connections, restoring balance to the body, and little by little, it guides us back to ourselves. Perhaps tonight you carry a sadness in your heart, a regret, a loneliness, a loss without a name, a story nobody else knows. If that is true, I want you to know that you are not alone. Millions of human beings before you have felt exactly what you are feeling. They stayed awake through long nights. They cried. They felt confused. They believed they would never recover. And yet time passed. The long nights slowly moved on. Deep sleep quietly continued its work. And one day they realized they were still here, still living, still loving, still hoping, still moving forward. Perhaps healing does not arrive as a dramatic miracle. Perhaps it arrives very slowly, so slowly that we barely notice. Like dawn appearing on the horizon, like a tree growing day by day, like a wound quietly closing in silence. But that does not mean it is not happening. It is happening right now, inside your body, inside your brain, within every breath you take, and within the sleep that will come after this video ends. So before we say goodbye tonight, allow yourself to let go a little. Let go of the unanswered questions. Let go of today's pressures. Let go of the things beyond your control. Tomorrow does not need to be solved right now. Next week does not need to be solved right now. Your entire life does not need to be solved right now. Tonight, simply rest. Simply breathe. Simply allow yourself to be exactly as you are. Not perfect, not endlessly strong, not trying any harder, just a human being who needs rest. If you enjoy these journeys into the human mind, through the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, modern science, and gentle bedtime storytelling, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps make more meaningful stories possible, more healing journeys, and more peaceful nights for souls seeking rest. You are also welcome to leave a comment telling us where in the world you are listening from, or simply leave a small greeting. It always brings joy to know that somewhere out there, people are sharing these quiet moments before sleep together. And now, take one slow breath in, and one gentle breath out. Allow your eyes to grow heavier. Allow your body to soften. Allow your brain to begin the remarkable healing work it has been doing your entire life. Thank you for spending this evening with me. May you have a deep sleep, a peaceful sleep, and may you wake tomorrow with a heart that feels a little lighter, a little stronger, a little more hopeful. Good night. And I will see you again on our next journey.